All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. The copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
In the early 1900s, Okemah, Oklahoma was a small town filled with racial tensions that defined much of that era for black people living in the United States. Laura Nelson was born around 1883. In 1896, she married Austin Nelson. They had two children, LD and Carrie. In 1911, LD was about 13 years old and Carrie was 2 years old. On May 1st, 1911, Sheriff Sheriff Looney received a complaint from a local white farmer named Claude Luttrell about a stolen cow. Luttrell obtained a search warrant from the Justice of the Peace, A.W. Jenkins, permitting him to search the Nelson's farm. Sheriff Looney assembled a gang of white men, including Luttrell and the neighbor Oscar Lane and Constable Cliff Martin, to execute the search warrant on the Nelson's farm. They came to the Nelson farm around 9 p.m. on May 2nd, 1911. As they began their search, they discovered meat allegedly stolen from the cow that was found in the Nelson's barn. At this point, the situation escalated quickly. 13-year-old LD grabbed a weapon to defend his family. Laura Nelson also armed herself with another weapon. A firefight erupted, during which Constable Martin was grazed in the leg, and Sheriff Looney was fatally struck. Following the altercation, the Nelsons fled to a relative's home but were later arrested that day. The blame fell upon Laura and LD for the entire situation. The entire family, including 2-year-old Carrie, were put in jail. There were serious doubts about the prosecution's case, with many questioning whether the state had enough evidence to actually convict Laura and LD of this crime. As they awaited trial, news of the sheriff's death spread, and anger over the possibility of the Nelsons not being held accountable gripped the white community with anger and wanted revenge. Newspapers started printing sensationalized stories about Laura and about her family. They described Laura as being a wealthy and vicious black woman. LD was described as being tall and ragged, even though he was a child. The white population did not want to wait for a trial. On May 24, 1911, a mob of over 40 white men stormed the jail. They dragged Laura and LD out of their jail cells and took them 6 miles away to a bridge over the Canadian River, close to a black neighborhood. Laura was violated by the men. They then hung Laura and LD from the bridge. Some reports say that baby Carrie was found drowned in the river. Laura and LD's bodies were found the next morning by a young black boy. Hundreds of white people rushed to the scene to see their bodies. Some posed for pictures with Laura and LD's bodies. Images of Laura and LD were later turned into postcards and sold as souvenirs. There are photographs of what happened that day at the bridge. I can't show them here for obvious reasons, but you really should see them. You should see what brutality looked like during that time period for black people. See what black people experienced. I've included them on my blog. What happened to Laura Nelson and her son LD happened because of the actions of the Supreme Court in the 1880s, when it abandoned black people and ruled that it was okay for private citizens to harm and discriminate black people, and the federal government had no authority to stop it. Congress passed laws to prevent what happened to Laura and LD, and the Supreme Court overturned those laws. What would black life have looked like after the end of slavery and the Civil War, had the laws that were passed for black people to help black people have been allowed to be enforced the way that they were intended? We'll never know. What we do know is that the Supreme Court is still doing the same thing that it did in 1883, twisting the law to the disadvantage of black people. Had you ever heard the story of Laura Nelson and her son LD? And how does it make you feel knowing that the Supreme Court set the stage for Jim Crow and segregation? Drop me a comment down below and let me know what you think.
All right, Shalom. We are the Hebrew Israelites from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone. We're here to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and our fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.
All right. Today is another installment of our camp series called For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob, where we go into the history things that have happened, in the United States and abroad to both the northern and southern kingdom of Israel. Okay, northern kingdom, being primarily your Latinos and Native Americans, and the southern kingdom being primarily your Negroes, who would be considered the Haitians, Jamaicans, or the West Indians, and the so-called Negroes of America. All right, we go into this history every week, dealing with the atrocities that Esau Edom, the so-called white man, has afflicted upon us, both here and abroad. All right, so we'll go ahead and go with the opening scripture.
This is the book of Obadiah, verse 10. It says, "For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever."
Kindness, we talk about the violence that he has committed against Jake. We see now that this guy Kevin Roberts is starting to systematically go after the southern kingdom of Israel. We know that they went after the northern kingdom with the whole immigration policy. All right, and now they're starting to gut the voting rights. They've actually gutted it, the Voting Rights Act, which Jake is not supposed to be doing anyway. We're not supposed to be voting for these individuals, especially if they're not one of us, and the Lord has chose that individual, according to was that Deuteronomy 17, 17:15.
You want that?
Yeah, Deuteronomy 17:15.
I got it.
Okay.
In Deuteronomy chapter 17 and verse 15, it says, "Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee." It says, "Whom the Lord Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, thy power, shall choose, one from among thy brethren shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother."
And this in the recent years, the ignorance of Jake, not understanding who their brethren are. I mean, you got to realize this devil is never going to let one of us lead this country or come within a heartbeat of leading this country. Which means, when you look at the first one, Barack Obama, he's a Hamite. Okay, he's not of the seed line of Jacob. And that's clear. You can look at his last name. And then old girl, Kamala Harris, she's Indian. I don't care what organization she belonged to, from predominantly historically black universities. She is an Indian. Many photos with her in the attire and the red dot on her head. Okay, on between her eyes. She is not an Israelite. Okay, and she played that card. Actually, she played all of you all up to that point. Saying she was African American until those votes were certified. Go back and look at the tape. Once those votes were certified and they went in, she went to being Asian Indian. Okay, had nothing to do. And then she got on tape and said, when they asked her what was she going to do for so-called black people, she said she couldn't just do something for so-called black people.
Well, we know that not to get too far away from the main subject, but we know that they are set up. So anyone that is in a top elite position, and then you drop that down. So like you're talking about your high politicians, starting with your presidents, then you go to those who are like high as far as wealth and tech, banking. All of these are pushed by the top elite banking families, to push a certain type of agenda. And we see that with practically every president, but you could see, with Obama, the whole propaganda or that machine that was pushing Obama, rising up from no one knowing him at one point to like 2 years. He's just like a household name.
Yep.
And then of course you have Biden and Harris and all of that. They all have an agenda, as we say, is like two sides of the same bird.
Yep.
Yep. But we just know in the end, whoever is set up in the system of in a system called white supremacy, which is here in the Americas, they're going to be set up for the agenda of the top elite banking families, right, for the wealthy. All right, we're actually seeing it with Trump. You know how quickly he was put up and how he came in with an agenda, and as soon as he became elected the second time, who did he go after? The so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. Started with the natives, the Northern Kingdom tribes, and then quickly transitioned over to the Southern Kingdom tribes, and that's been their thing. That's what they do. You know, the Northern Kingdom get affected, then the Southern Kingdom. But let's get into the main subject.
Right. Yeah, and that's, you know, what I was leading to with the breakdown of that scripture. The goal is to overturn the 14th Amendment so they can really come after Jake again in real time. Okay. All right, so without further ado, you see the article on the screen. We will put a link to this article in the description box. All right, so you can read at your leisure. All right, and it says, on this day, May 24th, 1911, white mob in Oklahoma abducts and lynches Laura Nelson and her young son. All right, the article starts off, on May 24th, 1911, shortly before midnight, a mob of dozens of armed white men broke into the Ofuski County Jail in Okemah, Oklahoma, and abducted Laura Nelson and her young son, LD. The mob took the black woman and boy 6 miles away and hanged them from a bridge over the Canadian River close to the town's black neighborhood. According to some reports, members of the mob also raped Mrs. Nelson, who was about 28 years old according to the census records, before lynching her son alongside her son. Their bodies were found the next morning. You know, as I read this paragraph, it says Mrs. Laura Nelson, which means she was married. Okay, we were just talking about how this nation calls itself Christian at camp, and they have no regard for the scriptures. That's adultery. You know, you took that woman and you violated her. So that's another thing that Esau has to pay for. All right. So go ahead.
This is Amos chapter 1 and verse 11. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh by Shemashai power, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." And his perpetual hatred goes back to back in Genesis, man. You know, to where, you know, Esau, Edom, you know, he was rejected the birthright, man, because ultimately in the spirit it was set up for Jacob to receive the birthright, man. That's why here in this land, here in the Americas, man, you know, you see the tribes, you know, Judah, all right, you know, which is a part of the Southern Kingdom. You know, they get treated in the worst ways, man. You know, Esau is just able to do these atrocities unto our people, you know, because, you know, he's in power right now. You know, but Yahweh Bashim Shai is taking account of all these atrocities, these killings, beatings, all right, rape. You know, all these atrocities are being documented, man, by the angels, man. All right, and Yahweh Bashim Shai is not going to turn away the punishment thereof, man.
Right.
You know.
Right. You must give an account for everything that you've done. You know, everything that you've done. And it starts with their policies too. Somebody grab Matthew chapter 12, verse 36 and 37.
I got it. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 36. It says, "But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment."
So a lot of those murders were premeditated. You know, and they were most likely false accusations. Okay, we're seeing that day in and day, week in, week out when we do these videos. You know, all Esau has to do is making an accusation, and not only did it wipe out the individual they were accusing, you know, they took it upon themselves to eliminate the whole community, drive them out, you know, spoil all their goods, take them for their own, take their land, you know, clothes, everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Go ahead.
Verse 37, it says, "For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned."
Mm-hmm. And they're definitely going to be condemned. You know, the scriptures already say that. You know, we're in the book of Obadiah, verse 18, lets you know that they're already condemned to be eliminated as a nation. All right, when it's all said and done. All right, back to the article. It says, a few weeks before, local police had reportedly come to the Nelson's cabin and accused Mr. Nelson of stealing meat. When a white deputy sheriff was shot and killed while searching the cabin, Mrs. Nelson and LD, who was reported as 14 to 16 years old in the news reports, but was more likely just 12 years old according to census records, were accused of killing him. The entire Nelson family was arrested and jailed after the deputy shooting, and some reports indicate that a 2-year-old daughter listed as Carrie Nelson in the 1910 census was also with Mrs. Nelson in jail. The prosecution's presentation at the preliminary hearing raised doubts about whether the state had sufficient evidence for conviction. All right. Many black people were lynched across the U.S. under accusations of murder or assault. During this era of racial terror, mere suggestions of black-on-white violence could provoke mob violence and lynching. I just said that. It says, though these communities had developed and functioning judicial systems, white defendants were more likely to face trial, while black people regularly suffered death at the hands of a violent mob without trial or any opportunity to present evidence of innocence or self-defense. In this case, after Laura and L.D. Nelson were lynched, it was revealed that they claimed to have shot the deputy as he reached for his gun and seemed about to shoot Mr. Nelson unprovoked. See, that's the thing, you know, it says here, they didn't have enough evidence, okay, to prove that these people do that. Can you grab Sirach 11, I believe it's 11:7.
I got it. Yep. It's Sirach chapter 11 and verse 7. It says, "Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first, then rebuke."
And see, Jake didn't have that opportunity. Okay? They never had that opportunity. Like I said, all it took was an accusation.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it took, with no evidence. Okay? They weren't trying to understand. They went straight to the rebuke, you know, off of somebody's word. You know, and like the article said, that rebuke was, you know, for the most part, death. Yep. Yeah, so.
And I was gonna make a point. You know, when this, you know, country was being established, Jake wasn't even known to even be a man. What is it? 3/5 of a man.
3/5 of a man. Yeah, that.
You know, Esau classified Jake to be a subhuman man.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. That was under the first. I think it was the first constitutional convention after the Constitution was written. You know, and here again, that brings up another point. Okay, how are we still 13% of the population, and you making efforts to cheat Jake out of stuff? You know, that there's a farce. Okay, because we know a lot of Jake don't take the census. All right, we're not supposed to.
Right.
So how do they really know? That's just a number that they keep throwing out.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Going back to the article, it says before any trial could take place, however, newspaper accounts sensationalized the case, misreporting the mothers and sons' ages and presuming their guilt. Press reports prescribed Laura Nelson as a very small stature, very black, about 35 years old, and vicious, while LD was described as a slender and tall, yellow, ignorant, and enraged. And see, that's that propaganda. Okay? What's that? Exodus 23 and 1?
This is the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 1. It says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness."
And that's exactly what those newspaper articles did. That propaganda did. You know, when they sensationalized it.
All right, something real quick.
Go ahead.
It's just for edifying. Propaganda is a deliberate, systematic spreading of information, such as facts, rumors, half-truths, or lies. Now, you notice it said facts, but then everything else was like overshadowed that facts, right? Rumors, half-truths, and lies. That's pretty much what propaganda is. Because if you're telling the truth, it's not propaganda.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then
That's
it says
witchcraft.
So it says to influence public opinion and manipulate behavior. Now, to a certain point, like the script, Apostle Bar, you know, I've heard coin, you know, or say, you have to know the truth in order to tell a lie. So of course they will give you, like it says, half truths, or they'll give you a truth, but then they'll I would say they'll give you a plethora. They'll give you an overwhelming amount of lies on top of it. And so what happens is that then you have all the people around discussing it, and then they go with popular opinion. So so now there's a bunch of confusion, especially now. Fast forward in today's time. See, then they could control the narrative. Newspaper, whatever's going out in the news. So-called blacks don't have a word, so they actually a court system. They could actually control the narrative. Today's time they can't so much, but yet you will see that everybody has something to say about the war. Everybody has something to say about you know, the many different men and so-called black men and women, Hispanic, Native American men and women who are actually unalive, whether it's been by police or by out in the streets of some form or fashion. And then they always seem to criminalize them.
Right.
That's one of the first things. They'll go back. You brought up Castile, is it?
Philando Castile.
Yeah, they went back to elementary school or some stuff, I believe, on him, you know, just to find something. He's like early 20s. Yeah, in age, but they had to go all the way back to when he was like in elementary school or some stuff, just to find some type of conflict, and then they blow that up.
Or you know, the situation. Remember when the kid fell in that gorilla pit? And they went back through the father's history. You know, trying to justify, you know, the parenting.
Well, give you another example. The one young lady in Chicago. Well, she was going to college, I believe, in Chicago. She met with, I might be off as far as the city, but so Salakia on that. But where she met the guy on some type of app at the bar, and he took her home, chopped her up.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in the news media, the lady had the audacity to bring up, well, you know, she's a criminal justice. She's 19.
Wow.
She's a criminal justice. She has she's working toward her criminal justice degree. Couldn't she have seen some of the signs?
Man.
You know, at 19. And so, so there's things like that they'll put out in the media, and if a young man, 16, 17, maybe 15, even as early as 13, you know, they then charge him as an adult for certain crimes.
Yep.
You know, so we see that there's an overwhelming imbalance of justice.
And that's by design, because remember, you know, we were talking about they want to overturn the 14th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says slavery is over unless you become a felon. Yeah. And so, we just saw what that kid He lost everything, and the guy is literally on the stand saying this. He's young, he's able-bodied, he will be good and change. You know, and this sounds like, wow. You know, that's what they really do. But Jay got to figure out a way to stay out of their system, you know.
Yeah, and that and again, that's an unbalance of justice and injustice, right? Yahweh Shai said, "A false balance is an abomination unto him, but a just weight is his delight."
Mm-hmm.
So we see that they work in unjust dealings,
Mm-hmm.
gains, riches gotten by deceit, and they find a way to to profit,
Mm-hmm.
from the downfall mainly of our so-called blacks,
Yeah.
Hispanics, and Native American.
Yeah, and it's a whole system, you know, especially with that with the prison system. You know, they changed the music back in the early '90s, so you can program these individuals with that frequency. You know, this devil works on a level that Jake can't even fathom, man. You know, especially when it comes to that system. You know, you get Jake, being violent and stuff, doing the drugs, lock him up. You know, 3 strikes rule. All of that was to, keep these prisons full, because now they're all privatized. You know, the uniforms or their stuff may say state of California, state of Illinois, state of Indiana, corrections or whatever, so on and so forth. But those are privately owned prisons.
Yeah, precept.
Go ahead.
It says Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 3. It says, "Why doest thou shew me iniquity, and cause me to behold violence? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are that rise up strife and contention."
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, this Habakkuk in his time, and of course, we're the prophets of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, hopeful in this time, and we see that from the history, those before us, and even now, we see the violence that has been perpetuated upon our people.
Yep.
Right? That's why I said, for the violence against our brother Jacob. And we're bringing out this information because this is a grievance to our people. Whether they know of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai or not, we do see the grievance. And, you would see our people marching in the streets and even marching for some form of justice. They would have water hoses shot on them. They would have the sheriff sicking dogs on them. If they then decided to somewhat uprise or fight back, they would close off sections of the city, so then the people would destroy their own towns and own cities.
Right.
And if it got too crazy where the government would have to get involved, the government always sided with what we say white supremacy.
Esau, yep.
So they always sided with their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there was any type of investigations, they do internal investigations upon their own selves. Yeah. And it's also come out that from many of these unalivings, you had everyone involved, from the baker, from the baker to the doctor to the lawyers,
the coroner,
the sheriff of the town, the mayor of the town. Everybody is all connected, and a lot of them, probably more likely were family as well, because usually a lot of these small towns, they all knew each other. They seen each other grow up. That's such and such boy, he's prime baseball player or whatever. Just throwing some things out there. This is valedictorian, and yet he's out creating mayhem and being a menace, and then they find a way to get him off. That's why it says in the Psalms, they're not as troubled as other men. It says, "Therefore the law is slack, and judgment doeth never go forth. For the wicked doeth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth." And so it says, when the vilest men are exalted, when the wicked, how they go?
The wicked walk on every side.
Yeah, when the vilest men are exalted. And so we see that from their occupying of America, colonizing it, and how how quickly they increased within this land over a process of several hundred years. They still have done nothing but like Yahweh Shai has said, John verse 10 and 10, the thief cometh not but to steal, to kill, and destroy. And everywhere they go, you're going to find these three things involved in some form or fashion. And then we also go back to I think was it Proverbs 6, where he says these 6 things do what the Lord hate. Yeah, 7 are abominations. So you're going to find some form of fashion in that as well. With everything that they do. Like in this particular case, a false witness that speaketh lies. That's a abomination to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai.
Discord among brethren, and not just ours, but their own. When they get them all involved. But you said something earlier. I wanted to make a point on. You said when they set the propaganda, the newspaper did, and people got to talking about it. That makes me thinking that, remember that exercise you would take, everybody would be in a circle, and one person would say something and say, pass that message around in the same
telephone.
Room. Pass it around in the same room. By the time they got back to you, the message had changed. So and that was on a grand scale to justify killing these people in the manner that they did. All right. Back to the article. It says, by the night of the lynching, Mrs. Nelson's husband and LD's father, whose first name is reported as Oscar or Austin in surviving records, had already been convicted of a lesser offense, sentenced to a prison term, and sent to the penitentiary. Wow. So they had already got him and sentenced him. All right. Says he was not present to defend his family against the mob. Unconfirmed reports vary regarding the fate of the Nelson's young daughter. Some claim she was found drowned in the river, while others claim she was found alive and taken in to be raised by a local black family. Man,
I got some.
Go ahead.
This is Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 22. It says, but this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all, it's like it says, they are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. You don't go back to the statement. They already got him. Because that's what these prison systems are for, man. Esau sets up sets it up for our people to be locked up, put in these prison houses. It says they are for a prey. It says, and none delivereth for a spoil, and none saith restored. Because even today, man. This all stems back to the persecution of our people. That's why Esau Edom has built these prison houses, man. All right, to set up a system that'll oppress them to put them back into captivity, man.
Grab that in the NLT.
Come on. Look it up. Isaiah. This is Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 22 in the NLT. It says, but his own people have been robbed and plundered, enslaved, imprisoned, and trapped. They are fair game for anyone, and have no one to protect them.
Yeah, because another part of that trap is what you brought up too. When they created that, it's like this school to prison pipeline, right? And then the communities in which we live in is also a snare and a trap unto us, because it was, it's a marvel really that many of us have grew up in many of the conditions in which we see on TV, and we've heard in different, like you've made mention, you can go damn near in every every state to a Martin Luther King Street. You see
Yeah.
how crazy, you know,
Yeah.
or Boys in the Hood situation.
Yeah.
You know,
Even the movie Friday.
I've been Boys in the Hood Friday.
Man,
yeah.
that resonated with everybody understood that situation. You had the same situation in every neighborhood.
Right, and so a lot of people, you know, you have star athletes and different things going through
Yep.
here and could never make it out of the system. And then, of course, you have the nations looking. Then you have our own people. We go back to Soul and Discord, our own women looking, and everybody's like, pull up yourself by your bootstraps. You know, you just need to work harder and things. But there's something systematically that that at one point our people were aware of,
Yep.
but we lost it.
Yep.
You know, and now it's coming back to know that we're in these conditions first and foremost because we sinned against Yahweh Shem Yahshai, and I got a scripture, you know, for that.
Yep.
But then secondly, Esau Edom received the earth. You know, as it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. And the moment that he got this, he started changing laws, times, seasons, image, iconoclasms, and different things, and then made us with the propaganda machine to be the worst of all the worst of the earth. You know, which is projection, because everything in which they place upon us, it actually is them. You know.
Yeah, that's that scripture, that's Sirach 23 and 15. He that is accustomed to opprobrious words will never be reformed. Roughly paraphrasing. Okay, and that's the thing. He constantly brings shame and disgrace to Jake when he's the one. You know, that's the worst. You know, we call that a hypocrite. You know.
Yeah. Let's finish this article off.
Okay.
I got something I want to bring up, and then we can end it.
Okay, back to the article. It says, after a black boy reportedly found Laura Nelson's and L.D. Nelson's hanging corpses at the bridge the next morning, hundreds of white people from Okemah came to view the bodies. Some even posed on the bridge to have their photos taken with the bodies of the dead black woman and boy. Those photographs were later reprinted as postcards and sold at novelty stores. Man, they mocked Jake, you know. Definitely. And that's what that picture is in the article. Okay. It says, the mob's choice to deprive the Nelsons of their basic rights to due process and hang them on a bridge frequented by black people and near where many local black residents live was meant to maintain white supremacy by sending a message of terror and intimidation to the entire black community. While the general sentiment is adverse to the method, the Okemah Ledger wrote the day after the lynchings, it is generally thought that the Negroes got what have been due them. Wow. When the special grand jury was called to investigate the lynching, the district judge instructed the white jurors to be mindful of their duty as members of a superior race and greater intelligence to protect this weaker race. Wow.
Yeah. This is James chapter 5 verse 4. It says, "Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth." Because again, back then and even now, it was still slavery was going on.
Yeah.
You were being a terror unto the Lord's people. And though, just like in the time of the first Egypt, we're in spiritual Egypt. What did Yahweh say unto Moses? Yahweh Shai says that the cries of the people are come up to me, and so there's no different. All right. Again, the angels of the Lord are beholding the evil and the good.
Yep.
And so all these things are going back to the Heavenly Father, just like Abel's blood.
Yeah.
Crying out like so these things, numbers, we brought that out at camp. It says
35 and 33.
Yep. He says, can you paraphrase it?
Yeah, this is Numbers 35 and 33.
Okay, I'll bring it out. Yeah.
Yep. And it reads, it says, book of Numbers chapter 35 verse 33. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, For blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it.
So this family started with the husband, right? You know, the wife, children. You know, their blood was shed, right? He was defrauded of his labor, like he was working and, you know, everything, and then he was falsely accused and put in jail.
Yep.
And when everything was to stop there, they helped forward that affliction. They went even further to go after the wife and the children. It's showing you the perpetual hatred of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. And so, of course, the Lord is hearing, he's seeing these, and what's making this come back to life. The fact that he's put it on the spirit of the prophets to bring this story right back out. You know, this was May 24th, 1911. All right. So and now we're here today speaking of it. Bringing this back up. You know, crying up to the Heavenly Father is like, hey, like we said, how long? You know, and he's gonna come. He's soon enough. He's judging this earth and the people, you know, who's running it. This is verse 5. It says, "Ye have lived in pleasure on earth, and have been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. It says, ye have condemned and killed the just, and they doeth not resist you." So you've gotten fat in the pleasures, you know, of being able to live deliciously on the earth, and then also take advantage of the Lord's people. And the Lord has hadn't done anything. He just allowed you to build your tab up. Now it's time to pay. Because it says the wages of sin is death. You know, and you've had our book. You've seen the rules in which the Lord had and has, and you implemented not a one. All right, that was it on that.
Yeah, like that. You were saying, you know, they that stuff is perpetual. If you remember the clip that was viral a few years ago, I think the woman was either from, you know, the UK, Britain, one of those, and some pastry or cookie was stolen. She was talking to her daughter, and her daughter said, "I didn't do it. A black man did it." You know, and that's the same thing that happens today. All right. Okay, back to the article. This is finishing up to the next to last paragraph. It says, when a special grand jury was called to investigate the lynching, the district judge instructed the white jurors to be mindful of their duty as members of a superior race and greater intelligence to protect this weaker race. No one was indicted, prosecuted, or held legally accountable for lynching Laura and L.D. Nelson. All right. It says Mrs. Nelson and her son were two of at least 75 documented victims of racial terror lynching that took place in Oklahoma alone between 1877 and 1950. All right. They are among the 6,500 victims of racial terror lynching that EJI has documented between 1865 and 1950. All right, we know that 1865 is when the slaves were free via the Emancipation Proclamation. All right, so hey, this is, man, a long time in these lynchings, and that's when it actually started. You know, after the freedom of slaves, because Esau was mad because they didn't have any more slaves. So if they couldn't have them, you know, what use were they? Just kill them at will, you know. So it got worse. All
right. This is a book of Lamentations, chapter 5. I'm just gonna skip down. I'm gonna read a little bit at the top and then just skip down. The point is in 11, actually. And that which is then is now. Had to, you know, just to say, because this happened also in the time Jeremiah, you know, who the prophet in Lamentations. He says that he says the prophets that have been before thee, before me, and before thee of old prophesied of many countries of war, evil, and pestilence. And so this was an evil that was placed upon our people then, and one that we've been dealing with, you know, now. He says, "Remember, O Yahweh," he says, "what is come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. Our inheritance is turned to strangers, and our houses to aliens. So our homeland is being occupied by a bastard,
Yeah.
right?
What scripture says that the bastard that dwells in Ashdod.
Kind.
Zechariah 9 and 5.
Mm-hmm. Says we are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are widows. So you see, we're dying in the streets, right? And a lot of us live in one-parent homes
Yep.
with your moms. But now, the elect, we come back to the Heavenly Father, through the Spirit of Yahweh Shai, his Son. It says we have drunken our water for money, and our wood is sold unto us, because the earth belongs to the Israelites, right? And everything starting with Yahweh Shai, but yet the heathens have occupied everything,
Yep.
right? Baruch says we are yet this day in our captivity, subject to payments.
Yep.
It says our necks are under persecution. We labor and have no rest. So it goes back to this is not our rest, especially as long as they're ruling.
Yep.
And just like this family, they were under persecution. I'm gonna jump down to verse 7. 8. It says, servants have ruled over us. There is none that doeth deliver us out of their hand. We know Yahweh Shai, like it tells us in Deuteronomy 28. It says 28:68. He says, and no man shall buy you. He said, no man shall redeem you. The true redeemer is Yahweh Shai, who's going to get us out of these conditions. He says, we got our bread with the perils of our lives because of the sword in the wilderness. He says, our skin is black like an oven because of the terrible famine. The point I wanted to get is 11. It says, they ravished our women in Zion and the maids in the city of Judah. So they utterly destroyed the man and everything that we had as far as a heritage. Even when we came into the Americas and things were built up, they went through and they destroyed, and then they took and ravished our women. And so if somebody can get Galatians 6 to 7, yeah, or I can, yeah.
Got a precept.
Actually, while you grab that, I'm going to get this in Obadiah. Obadiah verse 15. It says, for the day of the Lord is upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thy own head. He's going to give everybody according to the works and according to their doings. So when you see things are happening to these nations, and you see a lot of these people of the Edomite nation coming online, from the women, the children, complaining of an unrighteous father or an ungodly father. And you see them also complaining about the prices of gas. And I seen another video that I believe the elder, but a brother put out that was talking like a lot of people talking about unaliving themselves because of how crazy life is, and it was a lot of their people.
Yep.
A few of us sprinkled in the mix, trying to figure out like what's the purpose of even living, the life, because everything is now being bold constricted.
Yep.
It's choking the life out of these people, slowly, from the economics, to the food, to relationships. Proverbs 6 again, the 7 things that the Lord hates. It's placed upon, now it's going upon the whole entire earth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. It says, be not deceived, Yahweh Bashim Shai is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
So there's many occasions, 202, 203.
202.
202. And we always say skim the surface, like Amawan would say, this is the tip of the iceberg. And
he's actually number 202.
yeah, so read that one more time, Salaki.
This is Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. It says, be not deceived, Yahweh Bashim Shai is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
So everything in which we put out, it's going to come back unto you. This is what you hear that word karma.
Right.
What goes around comes back around. Go ahead, read the next.
It says, "For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption."
So Yahushua said, "The thief cometh not to steal, kill, and destroy." This is the vibration that's going to come back upon the thief.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
It says, "But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting."
And these are the ones that are teaching the true light, the true doctrine of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Starting with I had apostles, a great millstone, bishops and elders, and all the relative camps, and those that teach a likewise doctrine. You know, those who are actually teaching this truth in sincerity, and like Elder Malcolm was saying, risking their lives and freedom to do so, more so than ever, right? So that's where we are, and this is what, you know, when Yahushua returns, he's gonna give everybody a reward. All right, you're gonna receive a prize of some sort, but it's gonna be based off the work and what you're doing. You scoffing, you know, you coming against the truth, or you for the truth. Like Yahushua said, when the apostles with the disciples came and said, "Hey, they're teaching in your name," you know, and he's like, "Leave them alone. They teaching them a name," you know. He says, "Who's with me? Who is with me?" Like, let's get that real quick. I can't. He that is with me, I think it is. My phone went slow. And what it said, he that is with me, and then the other was like scattereth abroad. Somebody can help me grab that.
Scatter.
Yeah, try scatter abroad.
I got it. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 30, it says, "He that is not with me is against me, and he that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad."
Okay, read a couple verses up.
God, Matthew chapter 12 and verse 28, it says, "But if I cast out devils in the spirit of Yahweh," it says, "then the kingdom of Yahweh is come unto you." It says, "Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house?"
Well, I mean, and that's pretty much Esau, you know, has done that unto us.
Yep.
You know, when you looked at the Willie Lynch letters,
Yep.
you know, and how, you know, he took the men out of the home, the protectors. Well, go ahead.
Yep.
It says, "He that is not with me is against me, and he that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad."
Right. So I think it's even further up, but Yahushua, you know, he was confronted or spoke to, you know, the disciples, was like, "Hey, they're teaching in your name," and things like that. There was another point, and he was like, "Oh, they're with me," like, let them do, you know, they preaching in my name, they're with me. Roughly paraphrasing, but then that's so I could have been I could be putting together two scriptures, but I know this one's another thought too, because he that is not with him is scattering abroad, right? So you're teaching false doctrines, and you're causing a division, right? People to go astray off the right path. Yeah. Did y'all have anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to go.
You had something, you want me? All right, we'll finish with yours.
Okay, you had called out Obadiah 1:15 about, you know, all the heathen getting a recompense for pretty much what they did to us, but it goes down in verse 18 and talks about Esau Edom is the only one that will not be shown mercy. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 109, beginning at verse 12. It says, "Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any favor to his fatherless children." All right, and just like, was that James 2 and 13? You know, he didn't show any mercy. He's not going to get any mercy.
Right.
Roughly paraphrasing. Okay, and it says here the same thing. "Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any favor to his father's children." So his descendants gonna get the same judgment, and that's proven in the next scripture. This is verse 13. "Let his posterity be cut off," and posterity means from the progenitor of a nation to the furthest descendant of said nation. Okay. He's talking about Esau Edom. And in the generation following, let their name be blotted out. Same thing. You know, who else is going to get blotted out of this nation? You know, specifically, you know, it's going to be the whole nation, but specifically, it talks about Amalek being blotted out. You know, the small hatters, the 1948ers, and Numbers 24 and 20, and Deuteronomy 20:15 and 19, 25 and 19. All right. It says, verse 14 says, "Let the iniquity of his fathers be remembered with the Lord, and let not the sin of his mother be blotted out." You Edomite women got a lot to pay for too. Y'all lied about a lot of stuff. You know, said that so-called Jake raped you. Well, no, you took him. You didn't want the backlash of being caught. All right. And we know that's, you know, like the scriptures say, there's nothing new under the sun. Look at you now. You know, you openly going against your own men in favor of Jake. You're doing the same thing back then, except there was a penalty for it. All right? It says, let them be before Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai continually, that he may cut off the memory of them from the earth. That's Obadiah 1 and 18. You know, all over right there. All right? So after you serve in your captivity, twice as long and twice as hard as we did, but ours will be in righteousness, you're going to be cut off as a nation forever. Never to exist again. All right? All right, so with that, we hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, HaKadosh. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and our fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like it to the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.
Kwam Yasharala.
Kwam Yasharala.
Abba Babal.
Abba Babal.
We got next. Shalom.